Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to have a conversation today about how we integrate children in our conversations when dementia is on the table. How do you, the person diagnosed, the person that understands how it affects you, how do you bleed that in your conversations with children, grandchildren, kids important to you? In a way that's healthy and genuine to both of you. Children are always a part. Children are important in our relationships. We don't want to exclude them. They know more than we realize oftentimes. So we think about it in these ways, that they are contributors to our lives. And so it's important that they fundamentally understand to the degree they can so that we keep them connected. Children may notice the changes, but they will not necessarily understand. In fact, they very likely will not understand, and they may misinterpret, and that's not what we want them to do. And here's what I also want you to understand, that this is a growing learning opportunity for your family, including your children and grandchildren and those important to you, that it's not about, gosh, here's this terrible thing, as much as here's how we face adversities in life and how do we process those challenges. So factors that impact the child's response. So obviously all children are going to respond differently to this situation. Part of that has to do with the nature of the relationship prior to the disease. Were you close to the grandkids? Were you primary babysitter? Were you at the games and conversed in a certain way? Were you mentor? Were you geographically distanced? All of those things tend to implicate in some way their response and their openness, perhaps in the response. Where everybody is in the acceptance process matters. Is there an atmosphere where the conversation is open, where you can discuss things? Are there additional stressors in the household? So, seldom is dementia the only problem in the house. Maybe there's other challenges with their parents or finances or school or whatever it is. So what are the other stressors going on? Children can contrive private thoughts if the discussion is not open. So, they can have all kinds of fears. In fact, it's always been rather shocking to me sometimes when I've heard the fears of children. You think, gosh, they really thought that? I had no idea. And sometimes kids even older than you think. So they're worried about what's going on. They're worried about, is my mom or dad going to get this? They're worried about their own safety. Is something going to happen that we can't control? Am I walking on eggshells in some way? And at times they can misidentify that they did something wrong or that you're rejecting them. For example, if you accidentally mix up the name of two grandkids, do they really care? They don't even know my name. Well, of course you know their name. You just, it was just a blip mixing up their name. So these misidentifications can happen if the conversation is not open and remits them. Challenges with helping children understand. I mean, sometimes that part is not easy at all. How do we tell? What do we say? What's the process? What do we include? What words do we use? Some of the time they can resist the support and information they need, especially if they're pre-adolescent or teenagers. I'm fine, everything's fine. So they may resist that. So we may be left to, little blips, not long explanations, but little comments that help them understand that something's going on. It may help us or guide us in some way into a different strategy to make sure they're on board. Finding a balance between too much focus on the disease and sufficient information about the disease. Guess what? Having a cognitive impairment is only one part of who you are. It's only one part of your life. It's not all of it, and we don't have to focus everything on that diagnosis. But we do have to include some information, and we do have to integrate it in so everybody is understanding not only what to expect, but what you need from them, what's helpful from them. It's about this reciprocity, even as it relates to children and families. So finding that balance. We're not going to focus all our conversations on it. We're not going to spend all our time on it. We're going to open up an atmosphere where people can ask questions and where I'm responding to questions. And then, of course, developmental differences. There are all kinds of kids with all kinds of abilities, with all kinds of thinking processes, and kids can sound and be very advanced in some areas and very immature in other areas. Sometimes it's hard to exactly tell. So there are some myths and snags that I think stop us from our willingness to include kids in our dialogue. Sometimes thinking kids are not impacted because they don't show emotion. That's wrong. Kids often play and have all kinds of thoughts in their mind that are not revealed. Belief that hiding all your emotions help children. The answer to that is no. Kids need to see life as it is and have examples of positive coping. They can't do that when the atmosphere is one of which is private and closed. Feeling guilty that children in your life have to see or be exposed to the experience. Absolutely not. If we protected all our kids from every tough thing, they would be so ill prepared for living. It isn't about the exposure of difficult things. It's about how we guide the path in terms of coping. How do we deal with things? What's the graceful, positive way we're coping with these challenges? And then lack of awareness of your own level of stress and/or depression. So sometimes our stress level is just so high we can't think about it, or that depression is on board, that we've pulled inward. So as always, those things make your cognition worse. We've got to pay attention to those things. And we also may need to delay any in-depth conversation or extended conversation until some of that is remitted a bit. We can say things like, I'm adjusting to having these cognitive changes or to having these memory problems, and I'm figuring it out. So you can say some, general brief statement for kids to know that they're okay and you're okay and you love them and nothing's changed about that. So returning to what do we say? What do we do? So the education of the disease must be age appropriate. Don't tell kids more than they need to know or more than they're going to understand. We do want to tell them what to expect. So I might forget a word here and there. It doesn't mean I don't know the word. I just can't say it. There's something wrong in how my mind tells me what to say. So sometimes I forget the words. Sometimes I forget where I was in the story, and you can help me. So depending on the age and developmental stage, but really letting them know what to expect. That it's easier for me when I'm not in a big group, that when I'm in a big group, I might be quieter a bit, but I love you and I talking. So those kind of things. It doesn't have to be some scary phenomena where you're sharing, here's what happens in Alzheimer's disease or Lewy body dementia or whatever, but it does need to be on their level, helping them understand a little bit about what to expect in the here and now, and that maybe changes happen. Biology, we want to share to the extent they can understand, but again, sharing that biology, even for kids that are very young, it's about, my brain has something wrong. you know, that there's a piece in my brain that's sick, or whatever that language is, so they understand that it's about biology of which you cannot change. We want to share communication elements, as I said, how that might affect you, and what might be helpful. For example, if I forget a word, you remind me, or, you know, if I forget to do something, you can tell me. That's okay. So those kind of things. What is it you want from them? We want to share it in small bits, not big bits, not whole hour-long conversations. Maybe that would be appropriate for a teenager of a certain type, of a certain relationship. There's always these exceptions, but by and large, I think small bits are more manageable. They are for you and me, and they are for kids. Connect what they see with information. So use some concrete examples of what you've noticed in yourself or what they might notice. Anticipate that they might have questions, and you open the door to allow them to ask questions. And it's okay to say, I don't know. I don't know. But there's always this piece of reassurance that we're going to get through this as a family, and there's lots of help around, and I'm going to be okay, and you're going to be okay. 2, we want to normalize. So acknowledge common feelings, even when the child may or may not express. Some people, you know, I understand it's sad at times, or it can make me angry, and it might make you angry at times. Or, you know, you might think some things that I do are funny. I get that. So acknowledge those common feelings so they don't feel bad or guilty, you know, about being sad or afraid or angry about things changing. Connect with common challenges. You know, people are resilient. And we want to build resilience in kids. So to say, you know, there's other kinds of problems. And, you know, you remember when you had to move into the new house, and you know, you didn't want to leave your old room, and, you know, you felt sad about that for a time, but you adjusted. And here's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to adjust to this brain problem. So, you know, connect with challenges that might make sense with them. There's a lot of wonderful books and films that depict some memory issues. My favorite child's book that looks at some memory issues is a book called Georgia Music. Never uses the word Alzheimer's. In fact, some of it may be depression, some of it may be dementia. It doesn't matter. What matters is that there were some changes in the grandfather, and the granddaughter who visited and spent summers with him figured out, gosh, I'm not going to give up on my relationship with my grandfather. I'm going to learn another pathway to make sure we stay connected. And it's a beautiful story. There are many. Wilfred Gordon Partridge Mackenzie is another one that talks about memory. A little boy who lives next door to a nursing home, and visits his friend, one special friend there that has some memory problems. So there are films and books, and that can help us. It doesn't have to be exactly about Alzheimer's. In fact, I'm always a fan of those books who don't use those kind of terms. The more educationally based books are not the ones the kids connect with. The kids connect with the ones with pretty illustrations that tell a story that they identify with. Affirm the importance in your life, and you do not expect them to always understand or feel okay with it. You just simply need to say, you are important. You will always be important. I will always love you. And I know sometimes it might be tough to understand. That's, you know, simple as that in whatever version is appropriate for the child. Listen and observe. Respond to their statements or actions where you're identifying worry, fear, anger. And you just want to acknowledge and reassure, I get it, I understand, and we're all okay. it's not just about cognition. They want to make sure you're not struggling, unhappy, those pieces, to say, one of the greatest joys is watching you play soccer. I have so many things that make me happy. That's what I choose to focus on. Provide opportunities for the child to project their feelings in those objectives, kind of secondary external objects such as books, stories, movies, and pictures, to say, what do you think that person feels? And, what do you think about that kid? So that rather than them having to talk about themselves and how they feel about your cognitive changes, that they're talking about Wilford Gordon and his response to Miss Nancy, that kind of thing. Support expression of feelings and discuss the ways you cope. When I feel blue, I do this. Integrate humor so that we're balancing the heaviness with lighter doses. We don't want it to stay too heavy for them in their developmental stage. And again, reassurance, remind them they're loved and safe. Reduce sense of uncertainty about the interaction. If you have grandkids coming over, think about what are your best times. So often people visit when it's convenient for them. We understand that. But part of the equation is what works best for you, because you want those conversations to be special and beautiful. You want those times to be the most enjoyment for both of you that can be. So think about your best times and what makes sense, and share that with your kids and family. If the grandkids come over, gosh, the best time for them to do that is about 10 in the morning. And even if that can't happen all the time, there should be times it happens, so that you're absolutely in control of some of the quality of those visits. Consider connecting one-to-one rather than whole groups. So, if you're having a big family function, that may be a tougher time to connect with the grandkids, but schedule individual time to be with the grandkids. Those one-to-one times are easier to manage the conversations, and if you work together on different projects, it just allows that specialness. Consider activities to do together, so it may be most comfortable, and again, raise the bar on the quality of the visit if some sort of activity were included. So teaching them to work out in the garden with you, pulling weeds and having stories. Taking walks together. Watching an exercise video and telling them they're your exercise buddy and you're going to do this together. Do an art project together, cook together. So figure activities that you feel real confident in and do together. And then reassure the child that research is being done to find answers, that in the future, you have no doubt, just like I have no doubt, that somewhere down the path here, we're going to find more significant answers. We're going to find the answer. Share your stories. So again, always whole person. You're not just the diagnosis. You're not just the cognitive changes. Start talking about the stories in the past. Kids love it. Again, it doesn't have to be an extended conversation. You can tell them about your first car, what you had, or, a funny thing that happened in school, or something about some memory you have with friends, or etc. But begin talking about those stories. Those are really important, and they again help those children see, you're there on all kinds of levels. And that there's a specialness to your conversations with them. Incorporate opportunities to utilize your experience to help others. So, ask kids for their advice about ways to make a difference. So what we're trying to do is engage them to say, this experience we're having, these cognitive changes I'm having, how can we figure out a way to help others, because that exists. You know, I have worked with families where young teenagers of parents who had Alzheimer's disease began a newsletter for teenagers who had parents with Alzheimer's disease. I have worked with families where they had education programs in their schools that they would talk with classes about their experience with their parent or grandparent with Alzheimer's disease. I even had a grandchild who asked their teacher to have assignments around Alzheimer's. They ended up doing English assignments around learning about Alzheimer's and writing stories about Alzheimer's. So there's all kinds of things that can happen, but when we enlist the creativity of children, and think about things that both of you can do to help someone together. This idea of, you know, the more we use what is wrong for the greater good, it's the strongest coping strategy we have for us and for the children in our lives. So we think so oftentimes about this concept of it's a burden, but there was a wonderful study that looked at the impact of family caregiving on adolescent relationships. What was the positive outcomes of kids participating in caregiving experiences? There was increased sibling activity sharing, greater empathy for older adults. The family bonds were stronger. Friend selection and maintenance improved the way they related to their peers. And it provided a model for dealing with loss that was able to translate into other losses in their life. So there can be lots of positives if we approach this as a family and we do not leave the kids behind. As always, if you have questions or concerns or things to follow up with related to this topic or others, do not hesitate to contact us. We are here and available to process these questions and issues with you. Thanks so much and have a good rest of your day.